This is the Tree of Life, Season 19, Chapter 3. In this episode, we will be introducing the concept of nested substitution events. In the last few episodes, we talked about how substitution events can be sequential, where the negation precedes and follows the acquiescence, arising out of the interplay between tautological natural law and natural law by authority. In this episode, we will be talking about how substitution events can be concurrent, nested within each other, and the implications of this idea. To start out, a simpliciter substitution event sees the transformation of an analog structure to a digital one through negation, sublimation, and verbalization, through nesting of this negation generating infinite recursive paths in layers of 9, producing causal reordering. We can see that each of these paths, with respect to distinct analog structures, which are substitutionary, descend downward through nested negation. But concurrent nested paths arising out of infinite recursion do not have to be substitution simpliciter. It is also possible for these nested paths to be reverse substitution events, such that a digital structure is converted to an analog one, with negation following the substitution event instead of preceding it. In this case, the causal reordering produced by the reverse substitution event occurs into the future, whereas in substitution event simpliciter it proceeds into the past. In an ordinary substitution event, only person A, described by the top path, loses the events and experiences corresponding to time parsimony, being the causal reordering through sublimation and verbalization. However, when that causal reordering flows into the future, instead of the past, in a reverse substitution event, the experiences corresponding to that reverse substitution event are remembered prospectively instead of not remembered retrospectively. The nesting of substitution events, by altering the direction of causal reordering, can alter which path corresponds to particular memories prospectively and retrospectively. For example, in substitution simpliciter, the direction of causal reordering caused by sublimation and verbalization generates a retrospective reordering of events, such that person A, who negated, remembers path parsimony, or being the least convoluted path, and all others remember time parsimony, being the path which incorporates all nested paths. Assuming flipping back and forth between substitution events and reverse substitution events with each nested event, when the number of nested events is odd, it results in an erasure of the events for person A on path parsimony, corresponding to those convoluted paths are represented by time parsimony. When the number is odd and starts with a reverse substitution event, it results in the erasure of events for person A, path parsimony, corresponding to events which reflect causal reordering into the future. In other words, with respect to odd numbers of alternating substitution events starting with substitution simpliciter, the past is erased subjectively for the person negating. With respect to odd numbers of alternating substitution events starting with a reverse substitution event, it results in the erasure of future events corresponding to the convoluted paths, due to causal reordering into the future, that is negation in the future. Finally, unlike other even-nested substitution events, a substitution event simpliciter with a reverse substitution event nested within it has no impact on path parsimony, which remains joined with time parsimony. Thus, it is as if the negation never occurred for person A. This reveals a technique, which can be metaphorically described through the allegory of navigation as a rudder. If one is uncertain about how something will go, they can always start with negation, which will generate a substitution event. If they sublimate and verbalize at the conclusion of this substitution event, then path parsimony alone will be left, eliminating all the convolution which produces the causal reordering. They can, in other words, prospectively erase their own past. But if, for example, they start with negation, they can also, within the substitution event, generate a reverse substitution event, which will eliminate that retrospective erasure of their experiences. Thus, one can actively navigate the past and future simultaneously by initiating the process with negation. I call this form of experimental navigation of the past and future a rudder, the idea that you can prospectively choose to erase experiences, which will be negative, or keep them depending upon whether you sublimate and verbalize at the end of a substitution event. However, it is obviously not that simple, as anyone can create a substitution event within a linear stream by virtue of a proper arrangement of negation and acquiescence. Thus, sometimes it can be almost like a game of odds and evens to get the outcome you desire from a sequence of events. That's the end of the podcast for today.